Live look at New York City at 34 past the hour. It is cloudy. It is rainy. Ooh, it's one of those days.
Well, you know, and Willie, you look at that city. This is a city, as we listen to the Stones, New York's official British band. And the things that are going on in New York City, I mean, you got guys standing on sidewalks and actually being eaten alive, swallowed into the depths of hell where rats are all over them. You hear that great story yesterday?
Yes, I did.
And now,
you're not, by the way, for our viewers, Joe's not making that up. He's alive, but thank goodness. But
this is one thing I'm actually not making up. He was swallowed by the sidewalk. But let's look at those pictures again of New York. And, you know, the biggest problem right now, think about all of the housewives in New York City right now that are sad because their husbands aren't at work, right?
Right.
I mean, they're listening to Jack. They're listening to Jack Benny, right? They're
waiting for them to get up so they can make him some coffee.
I know.
Make him breakfast and get him ready for his day.
I mean, can you believe how is one so isolated that he would say, "Hey, I'm trying to get your husbands back to work," to a crowd of women in 2020?
It's amazing. As you guys know, you know Christina, my wife, very well. When I get home to the apartment every day, I hand her my briefcase. There's a hot meal waiting. I take off my top hat and give it to her. I'm just kidding. She runs 2 of her own companies that she started by herself. But to your question, Donald Trump, how do you get that isolated? Maybe by spending the last 4 years living in a penthouse in New York City that's all mirrors and gold with the same interior designer maybe that Saddam Hussein had. I don't know. Something like that when you're up top.
He's good.
In that penthouse.
Gold toilets.
Yeah, gold toilets, too. All right, let's turn back to the race. Democratic Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris set to campaign.
That was brought up, by the way.
Yeah, we needed that. Kamala Harris will be in Texas today, making stops in Fort Worth, Houston, and McAllen in the Rio Grande Valley, while the continued record-breaking early vote gives Democrats hope of pulling out an electoral upset in Texas. The most recent New York Times Siena College poll has President Trump 4 points ahead of Joe Biden, 47 to 43%. Texas has not backed a Democrat for president since 1976 or elected one statewide since 1994. Let's bring in CEO of the Texas Tribune, Evan Smith, and professor at the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas, MSNBC contributor, Victoria DeFrancesco Soto. 2 great people to talk to about the state of Texas. Good morning to you both. Evan, let me begin with you. Is Texas fool's gold for Democrats right now in terms of the presidential race, or does Joe Biden have a real shot at winning there?
I'm a big skeptic, Willie. Every couple of years we keep hearing this is the time Texas is going to turn blue, and it just doesn't happen. I'll tell you, I was a skeptic for the last couple of months, but I'm not a skeptic anymore. Texas is in play. President tweeted at 2:30 in the morning, his time last night, way ahead in Texas. No, Mr. President, you're not. This is the first cycle in a long time when we do not know the outcome of the election 4 days out.
So, Evan, they're spending time there. Kamala Harris is going to be down there. They're obviously going to talk an awful lot about immigration and families being separated at the border. We're seeing massive early vote, particularly around Austin, places where you see some progressive vote, young people as well. So what is a scenario, if you play it out, where Joe Biden could pull this out? What would have to happen?
Well, I know that there's a lot of attention to Senator Harris being in McAllen, and that's important because the Latino vote in Texas is going to be significant for the Biden-Harris ticket to win. But I would pay as much attention to Fort Worth. Since 1952, only one Democrat running for president has won Tarrant County, which is home to Fort Worth, and that's LBJ in 1964. Obama lost it twice, Clinton lost it, but Beto O'Rourke narrowly beat Ted Cruz in Tarrant County. So I'd be watching Fort Worth. I'd be watching the suburban counties up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Collin and Denton County, and as you said, around Austin, Williamson and Hayes County. These are not places that have traditionally voted for Democrats, but there is an opportunity in the purpling of the suburbs for the Biden-Harris ticket, again, to do something that no Democrat's done since 1976, and that's win Texas. It is legitimately an open question as to what happens on Tuesday.
Well, in Victoria, it seems that a lot of national trends are also applying to Texas. I've talked about it a good bit. A guy I served with in Congress in one of the most conservative districts in America was comfortably, Pete Sessions was comfortably in a Dallas suburb and in a district that nobody ever thought a Democrat would win in, and yet the Democrats took that last time. And I guess I'd be more skeptical statewide of Democrats' chances, except for the fact that none other than Ted Cruz keeps saying that Republicans need to watch out. Democrats could win the Lone Star State.
Right. And this gets to the purpling of the suburbs, which Evan just talked about. We're seeing suburbs becoming increasingly competitive. So we always knew that the urban areas where you had more diversity were good places for the Democrats to compete in. But over the last couple of cycles, we've seen these suburbs turn purple. In one of these suburbs, we have an open race. We have the first Afro-Latina running for a Democratic post, and she has a shot at winning. And this is in Tarrant County, one of these traditionally very red areas. So I think you see this purpling. And look, no matter what happens on Tuesday, you know, whether Joe Biden wins or whether Donald Trump wins by a couple of percentage points, I feel very comfortable in saying that Texas is purpling, whether that's a deep red purple or more of a purple purple. But no matter what happens, look at how the state has been trending. So the suburbs no longer are a deadlock for Republicans, and you're also seeing folks fed up with the administration. They've had enough.
Jonathan Lemire.
Evan, great to see you. There's no question it's remarkable that Texas is in play at all. A Biden advisor, though, that I spoke to recently said they felt a little better about it a few weeks ago than they do now. They think it's a sense of Republicans coming home and worried about the fallout from the former vice president's remark at the debate about ending the oil industry. I wanted to get your take on that. I mean, we've heard a lot about how that's playing in Pennsylvania as part of the fracking discussion there, but it obviously hits home incredibly hard there in Texas. What have you heard? What have you picked up on in terms of the ramifications of Biden's remark at that debate in the Lone Star State?
Well, sure, it's a big issue in a state like Texas, Jonathan, and the fact is that Republican leaders in Texas, the governor, lieutenant governor, and others have made hay of that in the last couple of days trying to put this over the top for the president. But look, so many people have voted early over the last 2 weeks in Texas that something that happens in the 8th or 9th inning, I'm not sure is going to be able to have the effect it would in a normal election cycle. What you heard earlier is true. We're at about 95 or 96% of our 2016 record-setting turnout just as of today, with a full day of early vote left and election day. We may turn out 12 million Texans, which would be a third more than our best ever election day. So whether it's the vice president's comments in the debate or anything else that happens here at the 11th hour, I'm not convinced that the shape of the election can really change very much at this point because so many people have already voted. What we're seeing in Texas is really a worst to first in a couple cycles in terms of voter turnout. And I think the story of Tuesday, regardless of who wins the presidency, is that Texas will have finally shed its worst in the country voter turnout label. And that would be a great thing for democracy in Texas and a great thing for civic engagement.
Victoria, do you agree?
I do. I absolutely agree. We have the dubious honor of being the state with the lowest turnout. The other dubious honor is that we're the state with the hardest voting, right? It's hard to register to vote. It's hard to vote. And over the last couple of election cycles, the Republican administration at the state level has been making it harder and harder. They've been decreasing polling sites. They put into place strict voter ID. They didn't extend mail-in voting for the pandemic. So the fact that we're seeing this record-breaking turnout is not just incredible because we've gone from worst to first, but because we've seen Texas voters overcome so many of these institutionalized obstacles that have been put in front of them. In a way, Mika, I think it's almost been mobilizing. Texas voters have said, we have had enough. And I think that this is really powerful to that point of civic engagement that Evan just mentioned.
All right.